Param Vijayate Sri Kṛṣṇa Saṅkhye, total world victory of Hare Krishna. My name is Sītapati Das, and this is Bhagavad-gita 2:4. It's just me today. My wife is a little bit under the weather, and she is graciously supporting me in doing today's class. It's like 11:15 at night here, and we are on a kill streak. Haven't missed a single day since we started Bhagavad-gita. Okay, Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, traditional name, Saṅkhye Yoga. Here we go. Arjuna uvāca, kathaṁ bhīṣmam aham saṅkhye, droṇaṁ ca madhu-sūdana, iṣubhiḥ pratiyotsyāmi, pūjārhāv ari-sūdana. Arjuna uvāca, Arjuna said, kathaṁ, how, bhīṣmam, Bhīṣma, aham, I, saṅkhye, in the fight, droṇam, Droṇa, cha, also, madhu-sūdana, O killer of madhu, iṣubhiḥ, with arrows, pratiyotsyāmi, shall counterattack, pūjā-arhau, those who are worshipable, ari-sūdana, O killer of the enemies. Translation. Arjuna said, O killer of the enemies. Let me say that again. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of madhu, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhīṣma and Droṇa who are worthy of my worship? Such a appropriate text for today. Let's go through the purport as it is here in this edition. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Respectable superiors like Bhīṣma the grandfather and Droṇācārya the teacher are always worshipable. Even if they attack, they should not be counterattacked. It is general etiquette that superiors are not to be offered even a verbal fight. Even if they are sometimes harsh in behavior, they should not be harshly treated. Then, how is it possible for Arjuna to counterattack them? Would Kṛṣṇa ever attack his own grandfather, Ugrasena, or his teacher, Sāndīpani Muni? These were some of the arguments offered by Arjuna to Kṛṣṇa. Let us now examine the changes between these different editions of the Bhagavad-gita. So let's have a look at the diff set first of all. This doesn't give us the differences between the synonyms, but it will between the text. O killer of enemies, O killer of madhu in the revised and enlarged edition. O killer of madhu, Kṛṣṇa in the original. And in the addition of, these were some of the arguments offered by Arjuna to Kṛṣṇa. So we can see that there. In here, we see original manuscript arguments offered by Arjuna to Kṛṣṇa. Okay, let's have a look at the original manuscript. It's in here. Respectable superiors like Bhīṣma the grandfather and Droṇācārya the teacher are always worshipable. Even if they attack, they should not be counterattacked. It is general etiquette that superiors are not to be offered a fight, even by talk. Even if they are sometimes harsh in behavior, they should not be harshly treated. Then how is it possible for me to counterattack them? Did you ever attack your grandfather Ugrasena and teacher Sāndīpani Muni? These were some of the arguments offered by Arjuna to Kṛṣṇa. Okay, so there have been changes to the synonyms, the word for word. If we go in here, we can see unto Bhīṣma has been struck out, unto Droṇa has been struck out, and it looks like ari-sūdana will have a, yes, it has a hyphen in there. So the original manuscript has unto Droṇa and unto Bhīṣma in it. So this change, striking out unto Bhīṣma and unto Droṇa, doesn't take it closer to Prabhupada. It doesn't take it closer to this manuscript. So the argument that these edits take it closer to Prabhupada, take it back to his original words, is not correct. Because here what has happened is between the first edition and the second edition, someone has taken it upon themselves to correct Prabhupada's errors because they know better than Prabhupada does, apparently. This is the theory that informs the editing. It's reverse engineered by looking at it. The theory as it's explained is we're taking it closer to Prabhupada's words. We're removing the errors that the editors made. But what they've done here is they have removed Prabhupada's words from the book, which is inconsistent with taking it closer to Prabhupada. They're taking it closer to something else, something other than Prabhupada's words. Now, whether they even have the mandate to take it anywhere is a whole other thing, but their expressed theory that they're using doesn't match the actual edits, and you'll never be able to tell unless you actually examine them in detail. Let's go back to the verse because I want to comment on this particular verse. So let's go with the closer to Prabhupada edition, the first edition. O killer of madhu, Kṛṣṇa. That's another point here as well, is that O killer of enemies, madhu and others. Okay, so the addition of the word Kṛṣṇa, the name Kṛṣṇa here, is the addition of Krishna's name, is Hayagriva. Arjuna is asking, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhīṣma and Droṇa who are worthy of my worship? Now, in the first chapter, Arjuna spoke about the economics, the consequences of fighting for himself, for others. Now he's talking about Vedic etiquette. How can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhīṣma and Droṇa who are worthy of my worship? This is a big consideration for him. He has to fight against his grandfather and against his teacher. And so naturally it concerns him. But he will have to do it. So, yeah, modern application. I find myself in a similar situation, you know, especially with this of the book edits. How can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhīṣma and Droṇa who are worthy of my worship, my superiors, respectable superiors? They're always worshipable, according to Srila Prabhupada's Purport. They should not be harshly treated. They're not even to be offered a verbal fight. And yet here I am, calling it as I see it with the book edits. I have 3 copies of Bhagavad-gita on my other desk. And I went through them earlier this evening, and 2 of them claim to be the second edition, and 1 claims to be something called the complete edition. The 2 that claim to be the second edition say that their copyright is 1983, but the 2 books contain different content. One was printed in 2006, one was printed in 2020. These 2 books claim to be the same second edition. They claim to have a copyright of 1983, and yet the content between the 2 differs. So between 2006 and 2020, well, it's difficult to say because the edits that are in the 2020 edition could have been done before 2006. It's not possible to say now about any particular book, even based on the copyright date or the printing date, what the content will be. Now, this is a serious issue. It's like if I show you what it is, I'll put a post on Facebook with it. It's a single. I don't know about all of the differences in the book because I haven't gone through everything, but I identified the one in 2.2 that we identified the other day. Bhagavan has been lowercased and Aryan's was uppercased. So one of these second edition books has an uppercase A, the other one has a lowercase a for Aryan. Both have lowercase b for Bhagavan. What's the big deal? It's just a single letter, you know. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? How do I explain this in a way that can land for people to understand how important this is? I spent 3 years in the BBT, running the BBT in Peru, servicing 5 countries: Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Argentina. So that's where I sold those books. But most of it was to Ecuador and Peru. And we printed them in Peru, and I was responsible for overseeing translation, for layouts, production of new titles. So I did Transcendental Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. It was a small book by Srila Prabhupada. And another book, a new translation of one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, so I oversaw that. And the production of books like Nectar of Instruction. So we did mostly small books there. So I had 3 years of running the BBT there, and I understand something of the issues that are involved. I then, after working in the BBT, went to work in an enterprise, a large open source enterprise software company for 10 years. I got this here on my desk. This is my 10-year award for working at Red Hat. I was there from 2004 to 2014. And 8 of those years I spent in the technical writing department as a technical writer and editor, and then managing technical writers and also the process. And we were part of the company, in a part of the company called Engineering Services Organization, ESO. What Red Hat does is it takes open source software and then reliably and reproducibly produces a certified, insurable enterprise software product out of that. Now, effectively and essentially what the company does is we are an engineering company that takes open source software at one end and produces usable enterprise software at the other end. And it's an engineering process that we use. So you can get lost in the smokescreen of the edits and, oh, it's only one letter and like commas and different things like that. And there are deeper issues that you can go into if you've got the time, but you can just look at this one thing for now. If I have a process that produces an output at the other side and it has an unknown content in that product at the end, it means that my process is uninsurable. Now, having worked in the BBT, in a BBT in one part of the world, I can tell you that someone who knows something about the BBT's operation in ISKCON could say, well, you know, these 2 different books that you have with the different copyrights, like you can't tell what the content of the book will be. There's nothing. Both of them claim to be the 2nd edition. Both of them have the same copyright. The only thing that's different is the printing date. So, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, we're not a big enterprise company, you know. Like, ISKCON is made up of, like, kind of little small fiefdoms in different places. And you know, that's just the way that is. This is a huge risk. Because at this point, edits going into these books the way that they are and being produced the way they are, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Srila Prabhupada has like a Bengali saying that he would say, that if you test 1 grain of rice, it will tell you what the whole pot is like. So you have these books that are lacking integrity, and they're produced using a process that lacks integrity. And even if you take the best case scenario, which is, this is just like well-intentioned, sincere devotees who are materially incompetent. Let's just be straight about that. It's material incompetence. It's not a very high level of material expertise to produce it like that. And these are Srila Prabhupada's books. If we did that, if we had a process that was producing unknown content, like you can't tell what it is, at Red Hat, a malicious actor would use that lack of integrity in the process to inject some kind of corrupting code into our engineering pipeline to get it into the enterprise that they want to attack. It's like a supply chain attack. Instead of attacking the company itself, you attack one of the companies that supplies the company. And you look for, companies that have weak integrity, lacks of integrity around their processes. So this is in the best of all worlds, where the lack of integrity in this process is due to incompetence. It means that it's vulnerable and it will be exploited by a malicious actor who wants to corrupt the text. But the text is already corrupted. The text is corrupted because there are multiple versions of the same book floating around now, and they keep changing it. So one of the things about that is that book that claims to be the second edition, it's a lie. It's not the second edition. It is a mutating document with a process that lacks transparency and integrity. It lacks accountability, transparency. You can't tell what is happening, why it's happening. When we do this investigation here and we compare these things, we derive a theory of the editing that doesn't match the expressed theory, taking it closer to Srila Prabhupada. Now, regardless of this other question, which is, who told you to do that? It is manifestly a lie, deception. Because in this particular one here, we see that it has been edited in such a way that it takes it away from Srila Prabhupada. Because, the unto Bhīṣma and the unto Droṇa have been struck out. And in the manuscript, it has unto Bhīṣma and unto Droṇa. This change has taken it not closer to Srila Prabhupada, but further away. And it's being done using a process that produces corrupted versions of the text that they purport to be the second edition. And the idea is that if you look at it, you go, this is the second edition. But the second edition is a lie. So this process lacks integrity, and in such a way, it's so incompetent. It's not so incompetent. If it is a product of incompetence, it will be exploited by a malicious actor. But we're approaching at this point a level of incompetence that is indistinguishable from malice itself. On the Namras podcast, on side digression here, on my Namras podcast in 2021 about the vaccines, the ISKCON's taking a position on vaccination as a philosophical deviation, I quoted this verse. Kathaṁ bhīṣmam aham saṅkhye, droṇaṁ madhu-sūdana. How can I counterattack in battle men who are worthy of my respect? And I was saying to Namras that the reason why more devotees are not speaking out about this is because the leaders have come out and said, taking the jab is good. Why I decided that getting vaccinated against COVID-19 was the right decision for me. I was like, a lot of devotees are just like, I can't say anything because my superiors have said this. And I was like, Bhagavad-gita, Arjuna asks the same question. He has the same concern. No, I, as an intelligent, thinking person, have the same concern myself. People are going to say, who does this guy think he is? What does he think he knows? Well, I did 3 years of service in the BBT producing the books. I understand the problem space. I spent 8 years as a professional writer and editor working for a company that eventually sold for $139 billion, was the second biggest acquisition in history up to that point. That was maybe 2016 or 17, something like that, 2018. Who do I think I am to do this? I can see it, and if you can see it, you have to say it. The process that's used to produce this, the process of the editing, the theory that informs the editing itself is not what they are saying that it is. That's either a product of delusion, arrogance and delusion combined with deception, or malice. Now the thing about this is that malicious actors take advantage of arrogant and delusional people. And that's the lesson of both Duryodhana and Kamsa in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Kamsa was the uncle of Kṛṣṇa, and he tried to kill Kṛṣṇa before he was born. King Kamsa. Duryodhana, let's stick with Duryodhana here. We've examined his psychology. He's driven by this selfish desire, and he also has his father, all over him about my son can fulfill my unrequited desires. I've never actually heard anyone say that word. My unfulfilled desires, my son is going to do it. And so he has a weakness of character that he's not able to say, I will not do it. I'm not going to do it. He has a weakness of character. He can't do that. He's also, desires to enjoy royal happiness, just like Arjuna confesses. But, at a point in the Mahabharata, Duryodhana tries to kill himself because he's been saved from a Gandharva by the Pandavas. And he feels so remorseful for how badly he's treated them. He feels so ashamed that his enemies have saved him, saved his life. He now owes his life to them, that he attempts to kill himself. And when he does that, he's taken to the netherworld by a Danava, a shadowy figure who puts him in a room with 13 other people with these hoods on. This is found in Sadaputta Das, Richard L. Thompson's Alien Identities, also known as Parallels, Ancient Insight into Modern UFO Phenomenon. And so the Danavas there, they say to Duryodhana that, we have placed you in this position and it's taken generations for us to set this up. So you cannot ruin this by killing yourself now. You must go back and you must kill the Pandavas. So Duryodhana comes back and then he wakes up and it's kind of like a dream and it fades from his memory, but he remembers only one thing. I must kill the Pandavas. So my point here is that even those who have character flaws, they might be arrogant, incompetent, and delusional. So incompetent and delusional, unable to estimate their own level of competence. They are taken advantage of by dedicatedly evil, malicious actors. And it's just like if I have a company that produces enterprise software and I don't have integrity in my production pipeline, some malicious actor will inject something into there. So the way that this is set up right now, these books are vulnerable to hijacking and to modification and corruption over time. The integrity has already been corrupted. The content has been subtly altered according to an agenda that is not what it says it is, taking it closer to Prabhupada. It's some other agenda operating in these books right now. And with the process set up the way that it is, the corruption will continue over time. So the process of production, of the editing and what's happening there, itself is the issue. It's not a question of like these commas or that commas. And so the best place to look at that and understand it really in depth is the interview between Garuda Das and Namras on the Namras podcast. So Garuda Das, he did a 5-year in-depth study on, he's a professor in how to do editing, and he convened a conference called posthumous editing of a great master's work, with special focus on Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he had 13 PhDs come to that conference. 8 of them are Vaishnavas, 6 of them are Prabhupada disciples, and they presented papers. The book will be coming out soon from the conference about how to treat the words of the Acharya after he has departed. And he invited the GBC and the BBT to come to it, and no one came. So it's a level, it's at this point it's meaningless whether it's incompetence or malice. It's like, it's a combination of all of those things. Kathaṁ bhīṣmam aham saṅkhye droṇaṁ ca madhu-sūdana iṣubhiḥ pratiyotsyāmi pūjārhāv ari-sūdana. How can I counterattack in battle men who are worthy of my respect? Ari-sūdana, madhu-sūdana. Arjuna uses these 2 names in this verse. Madhu-sūdana means one who kills the demon Madhu. Ari-sūdana means one who kills the enemy. Arjuna is saying, how can you ask me to kill Bhīṣma and Droṇa, my superiors, my teacher, my guru, my grandfather? You wouldn't do such a thing. You killed Madhu. Madhu's a demon. You are ari-sūdana, one who kills enemies, not one who kills family members. And yet, Arjuna must do it. Whenever I find myself in this situation where I see something and I'm like, if you see something, you have to say something. But how can I say something? These people are my superiors. I think of this verse. Arjuna also has the same concern. But Kṛṣṇa will counsel him in such a way that he will step through that concern and take the actions that are required of him on the battlefield. Dana up in the chat. Changes to Srila Prabhupada's book is envy, jealousy to Srila Prabhupada and Sri Kṛṣṇa, or great incompetence, or both. Yeah, there's just no way around that. Even the fact that, I've had these Bhagavad-gitas sitting here for so many years, these 3 Bhagavad-gitas that I just compared, and I never questioned it. It's the 2nd edition. It's the one where they fixed the mistakes that the, neophyte editors made. Fenella says, interesting and disappointing that the GBC never attended that conference with so much expert advice on hand there. Yeah, disappointing if you have a particular expectation that you expect them to operate, to be interested in the truth and in the best way and people's expertise. I can just see it now, my 10 years at Red Hat and 8 years in the editing department there, working in this company that sold for $139 billion. It's like, well, that's just material. Or you can't expect, the devotees to operate like that. We just don't operate like that. And yet, here is a devotee, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who assembles 13 PhDs, 6 of them who are Prabhupada's disciples, 8 of them who are Vaishnavas. So that the other 2, I'm not sure, the grand disciples, or who can say. But there's no interest in that. Something else is operating here. Something deceptive. Something that produces 2 books that have different content and then says it's the 2nd edition of the Bhagavad-gita and there's nothing to see here. And you should just trust us and we know what we're doing. And I find it insulting that you would think that, the language that you use makes it sound like there's a dark conspiracy. There is. There just simply is. It's a conspiracy of incompetence at the very least. but it steps way over that line because there are very, very qualified devotees who have been addressing this issue for quite some time now, and there is a definite resistance to even telling the truth about what is happening here. It's a lie. The second edition is a lie. It is not a second edition. It is a corrupting process without transparency that enables multiple versions of this document to be produced. Srila Prabhupada's book mutated over time. It is guaranteed to be hijacked by a malicious actor if it's a product purely of incompetence. But we're at the point now where that explanation doesn't cut the mustard anymore. It's gone too far for that. Anything else that I wanted to say about this today? Oh yeah, I wrote a paper, an article called GBC Resolution 311, annotations sets a risky precedent, in 2008. At that time, the GBC had directed the BBT to annotate Srila Prabhupada's books, and I wrote a paper in defense of Srila Prabhupada's books and explaining why that was a terrible idea, and the fact that they introduced that idea and the way that they did it demonstrated that they were at the very least incompetent and unqualified to do it. Even at the time it was like, who am I to say this thing? But I'm like, why is no one else saying this? This must be said. And then when I encountered the issue of the edits and looked into it, let me look for myself and understand this. And then went through the BBT edits, BBT changes, book changes, websites, and as you have been seeing me do, we're going through verse by verse and comparing them and analyzing the theory of editing that has been, explained that this is what it is. The same arguments against these book edits that I made, the same arguments against the annotations that I made in 2008 apply equally to these book edits. And the only reason why I haven't been all about that previously is because these book edits are hidden. They are deliberately obscured behind a lack of transparency and deception in the presentation of what's going on. And that paper that I wrote in 2008, I was assisted in writing that because I was a writer at the time at Red Hat in 2008. Actually, I would have been editing and running a team of technical writers. But I was assisted in writing it by a senior editor there who was a Talmudic scholar. He had trained to be a rabbi. And so he was expert in understanding scriptural tradition, how scriptures are treated, as well as being a senior technical editor, in the commercial software space. And then another devotee who also worked there and was a senior writer there. So what do I want to say about that? Maybe I just wanted to share that. Yeah. Now that I know that this problem is definitely the annotation should not be done, but the 50th anniversary Macmillan Bhagavad-gita. So Garuda Das, who did the conference was last year or the year before, and since then he's produced a proof of concept. It's not a second edition, it's a 50th anniversary edition of the first edition, and it has the corrections in it. And the corrections are done in the form of a correction in place. These are just for like egregious spelling or things that are clearly wrong. The kinds of ones that the BBT editors bring out and say, you don't want to leave planet of the trees in there, do you? When it's meant to be planet of the Pitris, which means planet of the forefathers. You don't want to leave that in there, do you? It's like, well, no, I don't want to leave that in there, but I don't want a corrupted process with no transparency and deception either, because that's what you're trying to get with this. But Garuda Prabhu has created this proof of concept 50th anniversary edition. And so Planet of the Trees is replaced with Planet of the Pit Trees, and then there's a very tiny note, superscript note, like 3 or whatever, and then the end notes, you go to the end notes, and it says 3. Original edition says Planet of the Trees. There may be, I haven't had a chance to look at the, this is from his description. I haven't had a chance to look at that edition, his proof of concept edition yet. I'm not sure if he puts an explanation there or just simply what the original text was. But in that way, nothing is erased in the book. Everything is kept, and it is not a second edition. It's with corrections that illuminate and very narrowly focused. And he said that Srila Prabhupada's editing philosophy, after having studied all of it, he's gone through everything. He said it can be summed up in 4 words: no mistakes, no changes. I think he put it the other way: no changes, no mistakes. So how to balance those two things, he's put his intelligence into it. So yeah, I'm going to put my energy behind that 50th anniversary of the 72 Macmillan Gita, and that's going to be the one that I'm going to use. Fenella says, yes, once changes without oversight begin to be made, it's a slippery slope, easy for mistakes and corruptions to slide in. Yes, also easy for mistakes and corruptions to be slid in, which is why if you're a malicious actor, you want that kind of process around the book, because it allows you to do that. So if people are delusional and incompetent, great. These are the guys we need running it. And if, you know, you can't find them, you get some malicious people doing it. But you get your front guys, your guys who are right at the front, they're delusional and incompetent. Like Duryodhana and Kamsa. It was Kamsa's advisors behind him who the Bhagavatam says that they were dedicatedly evil and that they were able to assume any shape that they wanted to. They are the ones who, even though Kamsa himself expressed remorse, just like Duryodhana, on various occasions, they turned his mind back again because he had a weakness of character. And Dhanadevi says, we have the duty and obligation to protect the sacred book Bhagavad-gita. It is our saving grace for us and our children and future generations. Tim Marwick says it should be a Git repo with the full history and version control. Yeah, facts. And some devotees, and I think this devotee is actually in Australia, Madhu Dvisa, has done a diff, and if you have a look at this as like a Git diff tool. And so he's pulled out the different versions, normalized them, and then he's done a Git diff on them. And, you know, you got like a ton of changes, and this is just chapter 2. But this kind of thing is not available from the BBT at all. And if you watch the videos, Jayadvaita Swami says, oh, we don't even know what all the changes are. There are so many. I'm not going to give people a guided tour of them, you know. And devotees wouldn't understand them anyway, because, you know, devotees don't understand, you know, I got input from the people who really matter and whose input that I needed. There's no sense at all of transparency or accountability. And so, having taken it upon myself to investigate it, to look at them, just from going from sort of halfway through the first chapter to the beginning of the second chapter, already whatever theory of editing he says that he's been using has been demonstrated to be completely not the case. He's using another theory of editing to do the edits, not taking it closer to Srila Prabhupada, in many instances taking it further away from Srila Prabhupada. And the fact that he lies about what he's doing and then refuses to be accountable or transparent about it, it's like, it's a level of incompetence and delusion that is indistinguishable from malice. So, Tim says, transparency is the way, otherwise it's a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Yeah, in his video he said, like, you know, what are you hiding? There are 5,000 changes. He says, devotees say this, and the language of it is like, you know, what's the dark secret? And he says, I find it insulting that, you know, devotees would... And I'm like, brother, you did this. You took a book that was like gold standard, everyone trusted it. It's Prabhupada's book that he touched to his head. And then you went and did 5,000 edits on it with no transparency, and now you're insulted that devotees think there's a conspiracy? Because there is. At the very least, it's a conspiracy for you to hide what you've done to the Bhagavad-gita, if nothing else. But you brought this upon yourself. Even if you were well-intentioned and, you know, you didn't have any ulterior motive, including other people's ulterior motives that you are not aware of, it's like the level of delusion is huge. I'm like, dude, you trust yourself that much? You're crazy. Absolutely crazy. It's literally like this guy is editing code on the production system. It's nuts. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the beginning, Tim. Tim says that attitude would never fly in a software development team, let alone Prabhupada's books. It's complete madness. But Namras's podcast with Garudadas is the gold standard in discussing this. It's beautiful. I've watched it twice so far, and I'll be watching it again. And then we'll try to get him onto the Vaishnava Perspectives on the Modern World podcast on Sunday. Tomorrow we're going to have Govinda Dasi, Srila Prabhupada's, one of his early disciples who opened the Hawaii temple and was a transcriber of the books. And she was also an artist who produced some of the paintings that were in the first Bhagavad-gita. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for chiming in. Param Vijayate, Sri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam, total world victory of Hare Krishna.